Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jean Bentley. And before we are joined by our guest today, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to the SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given over $6.5 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. If you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Kelly Hu, Sylvia Kwan, and Shannen Doherty of List of a Lifetime. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
So, List of a Lifetime tells the story of Brenda Lee, played by Kelly, who looks for the daughter she gave up for adoption decades ago, played by Sylvia, after a breast cancer diagnosis. So after finding Talia and sharing her devastating news, Talia convinces Brenda to make a bucket list of everything she wants to do, promising to help her complete everything on the list. While keeping Brenda a secret from her adoptive mother, Diana, played by Shannen, Talia grows closer to the mother that she never knew. So, Shannen, I actually want to start with you because this is one of two movies that you shot for Lifetime this year, List of a Lifetime, and then also Dying to Belong. And I want to know what the draw was for you when it came to telling both of these stories.
Work. So Dying to Belong, actually List of a Lifetime came first, and it was sort of a company, like the producer Autumn, I was told was wonderful. It ended up not to be a lie. She is wonderful. And I thought that the script was amazing. The way that they dealt with breast cancer was very honest and also very hopeful. And I felt like, I love the fact that I wasn't the one with cancer, but I was a part of the story. And I had no idea it was actually going to be on Lifetime. You know, sometimes these shoot and then, you know, they get sold to whoever's willing to buy it or to whoever's paying the most. I don't really know how that works. So it's not like I did two Lifetime movies, but I'm happy that it ended up on Lifetime. And Dying to Belong was a producer and a director that I've worked with a couple of times. And again, it was at the sort of beginning-ish of the pandemic. And I felt like I knew it was a set that was going to be very safe because Danielle and Gail are conscious and they treat their crew and their actors extremely well. They're conscientious about, you know, how things work and everybody's safety and general well-being. And I was happy to, you know, have a job, honestly, during COVID. I was one of probably many out there that was quite worried about, you know, what it was going to do to like sort of our income, to our workflow, to not just financial, but also that desire as an actor to always express yourself creatively. Like where was my outlet going to be? How was I going to get that out? And so I was pretty thrilled when the jobs came around, to be honest.
Relatable for all of us.
Yeah.
Now, Kelly, we know you from a lot of action and genre roles. So I want to know what the appeal was for this kind of character who seems so different from the roles that we've seen you before.
Well, that was exactly the appeal, that it was so different. You know, I don't ever get asked to do these kind of roles. And you know, when this one came up, it was January, the middle of the pandemic, and I had not left my house for a year. I was so strict with myself and everyone around me. But when this role came about, I was so afraid to go back to work. I was itching to go back, but still, you know, with COVID and everything, I read the script. My manager called me. He says, "You have this offer." He says, "I know you're not ready to go back. Just read the script, and if you don't like it, you can pass." And 10 pages in, I knew this was going to be amazing. And it was.
What's it like to get a new challenge like this at this stage in your career?
It's so great to be able to have a character like this, where there was so much to unpack with Brenda. She's just, there's her history is so complicated, and it was unfortunate that, and maybe in a way a blessing, that I only had 3 weeks to prepare, from the time I had the offer to actual shooting, because it was so emotionally difficult for me to get through all of this research, with her background of losing her parents and foster care, and giving a child up for adoption at such a young age, and then on top of that, all the breast cancer. So it was a great change of pace for me. I'm so glad I didn't have to do any action, because I am not in shape. Pandemic took that away.
Again, relatable. Well, Sylvia, we know you from Grey's Anatomy, but you come from the theater world, right? So what's the biggest challenge when you're switching mediums like this?
I actually love doing this movie because to me, it was much like working in theater. Like, I can read the whole story. I know what's going to happen at the end. So I was off book on the first day for the whole movie. And I like working like that because then I'm ready. You know what I mean? Versus sometimes I feel like TV, you don't know what's going to happen and you just don't have as much time. So it was a lot. I felt like it was a lot closer to working in theater than working in TV. And also just the pace was very similar. It wasn't similar, but it was a lot slower than TV. I feel like TV is like really fast and you gotta like go, 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 go. But working on this movie was a really good pace for me. So I had a really great time. And then I had these wonderful women helping me so much with like any questions I had, or, any concerns, or giving me tips without even realizing they were giving me tips. And I would like go home and be like, oh, I'm going to write that down. So it was just, it was a really great experience. It was a very educational experience for me.
Do you remember any of those tips?
Gosh, vividly remember this. So it was the first day of shooting and I had never met Kelly before. And it was just a really intense day. And I went home that night and I was like, I hate everything I did. And I remember asking Kelly, being like, what do you do when you feel that way? Like, and she was like, you've got to learn to trust the process and to let things go and to just know that it's a collective, right? It's not just one scene, it's all the scenes. So, just having that understanding. And she was saying, all of us go through that, it's kind of a universal experience where sometimes you're like, oh, I wish I hadn't done it that way. So just being able to hear it from her was really great because, she's been in the industry for so long. I was like, okay, it's not just me. Like, kind of everyone has this universal experience, right? And then Shannen has given me a lot of tips in terms of just like knowing what I don't know, if that makes sense. Like Shannen knows the lenses and stuff really well. And I'm like, man, I gotta get on that. I gotta start learning this stuff more, So it's just things like that really or just watching how they conduct their lives.
Well, no, it was great. For all of you, actually, I want to know what it was like when you met for the first time, because one thing I think that all of you have said about working on this movie is that it felt like a sisterhood. So I want to hear about that.
Well, we, as Sylvia said, we didn't meet for the first time until that first scene where we actually had to meet for the first time on camera. Roxy wanted us to really, for that to be as awkward as possible. And it was, but it was also amazing. And then Shannen just fills a room. I mean, she walks in and her presence is amazing. You are amazing.
You're far too kind. And I think the last time you did this, I started crying and I feel like tears welling up. So you had to stop immediately.
You know, it was awesome. It really was a sisterhood. And, you know, I mean, there were so many women behind the camera as well that were working on this project, you know, from Roxy Shih, the director, Autumn Federici, who produced him, who am I missing? The DPs and
Daphne,
Yeah,
Daphne, exactly.
Bree.
I mean, so many women. First AD. There were so many women.
We did have the token guy here and there.
Sorry?
We did have a token male here and there.
Here and there. But it really, I think it was just like awesome female energy, just super nurturing and super safe space.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? Is that when you, I mean, I've been doing this for a very long time and I've worked with a lot of women, and oftentimes there are women who instantly feel quite competitive with you when it should instead be, you know, your goal is always the same thing, or at least it should be, which is to put out the best product humanly possible and to help pull the best out of each other, to make each person shine. Like I want Kelly to shine. I want Sylvia to shine. I don't only focus on myself, and neither do these ladies, by the way. And that's like the ideal work environment, but it doesn't always happen. And it certainly hasn't happened in my career all the time. And I think that the one thing I can say about this movie and this work experience is that from the moment I got there, I felt that. It was like an instant sort of feeling that just hits you where you go, oh, this is comfortable. Like, as Kelly said, this is safe, but it's comfortable, and we can all explore, and we can all encourage, and we can all support each other, and we can all lift each other up. And there was never any like vying for attention, like there's none of that with these ladies, which is, you know, beautiful and admirable. And I would be happy to work with them for the rest of my career, to be honest. Like it was just a truly fantastic work experience that I think starts from the ground up. So it starts with Autumn and the crew that she puts together, and then it's Roxy, and then it goes to us. And I think everybody just sort of felt comfortable, and like we were all a team, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think just even from like this conversation, my biggest takeaway, you know, in addition to everything else that these women have taught me and shown me, is pay it forward. If you are in the position of having a long career, like both of these very successful women, pay it forward, be generous with your time, be generous with yourself, help raise up other people, you know, and because they were so generous with me, I'm like, I am definitely going to try to do that as much as I possibly can.
Always good advice for the future and for women. Well, like, speaking of that, of all of these women that you were all working with, that feels very appropriate when you're tackling subject matter as important as this. And, you know, breast cancer is something that affects women from all walks of life, from all around the world. And, you know, this is part of Lifetime's annual initiative, Stop Breast Cancer for Life. And I'm wondering, you know, does a story like this take on special meaning when you are working on it with so many women, when also, like, most people have your own family history with breast cancer?
I gotta be honest, I'm a pretty big believer in the best person for the job gets the job. And for me, it's not about your gender or your race or anything else. I want to work with people who are talented. I don't care what you are. Sorry, my dog could you know, be on the set because she's the most talented, amazing dog in the world. It doesn't. She happens to be a girl, so that's also a big plus. But, you know, and I think that we accomplished that. I think that we did have the most talented people there that we could get, and they happened to be, the majority happened to be women, and that was great. And there is something about a sisterhood that definitely brought us all a little bit closer together, for sure. But I never want to, I just, from my part personally, I never want to say that, you know, if somebody presented to me 3 candidates and they came from, you know, male, female, whatever, it doesn't really matter. I would always choose, as a director, I would always choose the best person for the job. I would not choose a gender or a race, and I feel pretty strongly about that. So I just had to put that out there.
Thank you.
I think, go ahead.
It's beautiful. No, go ahead, please. Because like, now answer the actual question.
Which I don't even remember what it was. What was the question again?
Being on a set with mostly women, and did it help that it was mostly women in telling this story that's about breast cancer that for the most part impacts women?
Right.
I think it
I don't even need to be here.
You do, Jean, we need you.
Like, I didn't even necessarily think about, like, it was a great experience being surrounded by women, but I think because the cause was so personal to all of us for a variety of different reasons, whether it's about increasing representation, whether it's about breast cancer, whether it's about increasing the knowledge about getting tested and the statistics of breast cancer out there and the personal experience someone can have, I think that kind of united us. And I think I was very blessed to be on a project where you can exercise your creativity, but also know that there's an undercurrent of something that you believe in that you want to put out there, right? So I think that was kind of like the force that kind of brought us all together, because we believe in it. Our hearts are in it, not just because, yeah, we get to play, we get to meet new friends and act, which we all love doing, but it's for something really important, you know?
Right. Exactly. And I think for myself, I mean, not only do, you know, I have experience with breast cancer in my family, with my mother, my grandmother, my aunt, but also in the Asian community where, you know, there's this misconception that breast cancer doesn't affect Asian women as much as others. And so I just felt like this was a really important message to get out there for our community as well, for the Asian community, as well as everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to know, I mean, Kelly and Sylvia, you have some really deep, emotional, intimate scenes together, which I'd imagine is kind of a dream as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to know about, what was it like sharing that experience together?
Sylvia is so great to work with. I mean, it was so crazy. Like, our connection, I was just thinking about this while I was getting ready for this panel, about how Sylvia and I are so much alike that if somebody actually said, "Hey, surprise, you guys are actually related," I'd be, "Of course we are." Like, I mean, our bond was immediate, and it was such a great connection from the very start. I just felt like it was so easy for us to get there, you know, whenever we needed to. And it was safe. I think when you're, like we were saying, when you're in a safe environment, when you feel like you're being taken care of and respected and understood, your process is respected and understood, that it's so much easier to get there. You know, it's effortless. It's when you have to deal with all kinds of other things that's, you know, outside of your control, that's, you know, that makes you have to be like in your head more, that it's much more difficult, I think, as an actor to be able to perform, you know, to get where you need to be in these emotional scenes. But we felt, or I did for sure, felt very safe every second of shooting.
I feel the same way. I mean, because our crew was incredible. You know, this was my first thing I shot during COVID, because in Grays, COVID was happening. So I was masked up and I had, a face shield. So it was very safe, but this was the first thing that I shot that we weren't in PPR. And I think just because of the culture that we had on the crew, on the set, starting with the director and the producer and everything. And then you walk into a room with these incredibly talented people. Everyone's incredibly prepared. And you're like, all right, let her rip. And they'll carry you. You just have to react. You just have to listen, and then because that's the gift of working with really dedicated, talented people. So I think just because we had that trust, it was great. I mean, same thing happened with Shannen. I remember the first rehearsal, I stopped her outside. It was like, how did you do that? It was so easy, it was just very safe and very easy.
You can also tell how talented Sylvia is because she just said something that was so important as an actor. And she said, you just have to stop and listen. Right. Mm-hmm. And so many times people just memorize their lines and it's like they wait for their cue and they just say it. Sylvia is actually, and so is Kelly for this matter, the both of them, they actually listen. So it's not just about knowing their lines and hitting their mark and showing up on the day. They're completely 100% in the moment. And they're listening for what's really happening within the scene, not listening for their cue, but listening so that they're hearing what their fellow actor is saying in that moment. And so therefore you get a much more truthful scene. You get a more truthful reaction. Everything has a lot more truth because you're actually listening. And I found that with both of these ladies, and Sylvia just actually said it. So I was like, damn, girl.
Well, and kind of related to some of the stuff you were just saying, you filmed this movie in a pandemic where we are all taking personal safety very seriously because it means safety of the whole as well. Did you feel like you had to keep other people a little bit at arm's length just for safety reasons? And if so or if not, how did that kind of affect how you were able to create both of these unique mother-daughter bonds?
I have to admit, I was super nervous about this, whole shooting during the pandemic. I had to have this long conversation with Autumn. I wanted to know exactly what the protocols were going to be and everything. And before I jumped in, and then once I was on set, I forgot. I mean, you remember because everybody else is wearing a mask and shields and everything, and constantly wiping themselves with the hand sanitizer and stuff like that. But in between takes, when we're supposed to put our masks back on or during rehearsals and things like that, I would just completely forget to do that because I felt like we were so, taken care of and everybody was so careful that I just, it went out the door for me.
Yeah. I mean, we had a safety meeting every morning. I also had a lot of anxiety and I actually sequestered myself in my apartment for a month before. The second I found I booked it, I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to see anyone. And I think the biggest lesson for me is take care of yourself, because in order for you to do this kind of work, especially when it's that emotional or that personal, you got to do things. I started coloring a lot, or things to settle the mind in your trailer, because you are isolated and you are doing this kind of work. And if you don't take care of yourself and shake it off or self-care, you're not going to do well. You know what I mean? So I think that was the biggest lesson for me in terms of the pandemic, as well as shooting this film during the pandemic.
I want to go back to something that you touched on, Kelly. There were a lot of Asian American women involved in this making of this film, and you wanted to get that message out there to the community. But in terms of representation, as these leads of a important film like this, what was that like for you? And kind of, was that part of the importance of what you want to do? Or is it just as simple as taking the role and doing a great job?
I mean, There's always that. I think being Asian American in this industry, you always have that sort of thing that's hovering over you, because you there's a sense of responsibility of having to do well for the entire community, because if we don't do well, if we're not successful, if we're not pulling in the numbers, then it just gives people, the gatekeepers, another excuse to not have Asian Americans in lead roles or Asian stories being told and things like that. So yeah, that's always sort of sitting on your shoulders. As for myself anyway, I always feel that. This I think was just bigger, than just the Asian community. I mean, there's breast cancer has become the most common cancer in the United States. It's difficult to find anyone who has not been touched by breast cancer in some way. So I felt like, there was the weight of all of that as well to have to sort of, carry and respect and honor.
Yeah. Well, I also think that, the breast cancer aspect of this movie and the message is really strong, but there's also adoption. There's also, really important representation in that aspect as well.
Yeah. There was so much research that I did about adoption and foster care and all of that stuff. And in that research, I just found how broken our system is, how women who give their children up for adoption don't get enough therapy or, aftercare after a trauma like that. It's just, there's so much that we need to fix with the way we handle foster care and, how kids age out of the system with no tools to survive. It's hard enough when you have the tools to survive on your own, but when you don't, and you don't have the support system, it was so heart-wrenching to do all of this that I cried buckets even before we started filming, just knowing how many people are out there suffering.
Yeah, and something that's interesting about this movie as well is that you get the adoption from both mothers' perspectives. So Shannen, I'm kind of wondering about your preparation for that aspect of the story.
I mean, I'll get super personal. I think I was in my early 20s and I used to do some work with a center called McLaren Hall. And there was a little girl there. I can't say her name, or I won't say her name. She was about 3 or 4, and they couldn't really get her to eat, and I bonded with her in like a ridiculous way. It was sort of instant. It was like she recognized me and I recognized her, like our souls, like our paths had crossed at some point in our lifetimes, like something was there. And I would spend quite a bit of time, and she would eat when I was with her, and I tried to adopt her. And unfortunately, Kelly wants to talk about the broken system, and she's right, because her father, should not have custody. That's why she was there, and the court ended up giving her back to him, and I was unable to adopt her. So I think my preparation was because I had already gone through it at a very early age in my 20s of desperately wanting to adopt this child who needed support and stability and a loving home and a parent that she could trust and feel safe around, that would never lay a hand on her, would never would never do anything to hurt her, but would only give her every opportunity in the world to flourish and to grow, and to be nurtured. And because of the system, I wasn't, you know, and then once he got her back, they can't even like tell you anything. They won't even tell you like where she is, what's happening. And it's still to this day, you know, is a very hard pill for me to swallow. Because I have no idea what her life turned out to be. And I hope that she's okay. And, you know, and I've definitely, you know, through cancer and the fact that took my opportunity to have kids away, I've definitely sort of ventured into like the adoption arena. It's very hard for a woman with cancer to actually adopt. You know, another thing that's kind of crazy, understandable to a certain extent, but also there's so many kids who need a good home that need, even if it's for 5 years or 10 years, my mom is, you know, healthy and alive, and I have a husband. Like, it's just a bizarre way that things are done. So I felt like I already had a plethora of emotions to dig into for all of that. And then I met Sylvia, and, you know, like we're all saying, there was like a connection between all of us. We all felt safe. And I felt like, yeah, like if I was going to adopt somebody, it would be Sylvia. Like, I would have adopted her in a heartbeat. So I, you know, it was an instant, like I felt maternal. I felt very much, I felt protective. And it's why it was so easy to do that scene with them when I discovered that, like, she's now met her real mom and her biological mom, and they're, you know, becoming close. That sort of, that feeling of a little bit of betrayal, but it's more of like insecurity. It's more of, no, you're mine. Like, not wanting to lose something so precious that you love so much. And Sylvia made that incredibly easy. And so did Kelly. Like, just, I love that scene. I love the whole way that it's performed. And to go back to what I said before about actors that lift each other up and let each other shine. Like, there wasn't a moment there where any of us were like fighting for the moment. It just was a moment that we all sort of delved into. And Jamie, who played my husband, he was right there with us, you know, and it's yeah. So that's my preparation. Sorry, I go off on tangents, especially when I'm sick.
No, it was lovely though. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing. I want to ask Sylvia, you know, hearing these different perspectives of these women who definitely seem like they've both created really wonderful bonds with you. What was it like, you know, to do that with each of them? And then also I want to know, you went from, you know, this ensemble on Grey's to kind of leading this movie, and what was that like too?
I think, honestly, if I hadn't done as much theater as I did, I wouldn't have been able to do this movie. And I know everyone has a different path in terms of cultivating their art and their craft. And that just happened to be mine. But because I had been leads in plays before, I was like, oh, I just have to do this in front of the camera, you know? And it's not to say that I wasn't nervous. I was really, really nervous. But like I said, like, everyone's prepared, everyone's, you know, driven by the same cause. So you just translate your technique into a different medium, right? But the foundation is there. So, you know, like, if you can play classical piano, then you can play jazz or musicals, or, you know, you have that foundation. You might have to work on it a little bit, but you can eventually translate it. So that was definitely really great. And I think, again, like, we keep saying this, and it almost sounds like it's not real, but it is. Like, you know, I was really lucky to be, and I am very lucky to be in on Grey's in the ensemble, because you really get to learn as a group, and there are other people to guide you. But it really felt like that with this film as well, because, like, you know, everyone there you're all this kind of network of helping each other. And so, like, everyone has to be present, everyone has to be prepared. And so you just feel like, okay, we're all creating this together, you know? So it definitely felt like a group project, It was funny because when this movie first started coming out, I wanted to tag every single person on the cast and crew, but Instagram has a limit on how many people you can tag. But I was like, no, seriously, like every single person was so integral in creating this. You know what I mean? Yeah.
You're adorable. Oh my God.
Right? How can you not love
you on like Instagram, like trying to tag every single crew member and everyone. That is amazing.
Would you let me? Yeah.
Luckily, the crew was very small too. I think, but also I think that helped in a way because, because of COVID and everything, they had to keep it very small. But also the fact that that everyone had to rely so much on each other and everyone had to be on their toes. We never had more than 25 people on the set at any given time. And usually far less than that. And so, I think it allowed us to move a lot faster as well. And everyone just had to just know exactly what they were doing and have it all together.
And it felt
and they did. Sorry?
It felt more intimate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Well, I think that feels like a great note of empowerment and community to end on. And on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I want to thank you for sharing your experiences, your process, and your craft with your fellow performers. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.